Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education by Kate Colbert and Joe Salustio with contributions by Elvin Freites is now available for pre-order on Amazon. Get your Kindle edition or your softbound book. It's going to be
amazing.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business, as we have done over 520 times. As of today, we are now booked out till the end of March of 2023, every single day, talking to the most innovative and thought-provoking leaders inside and around higher education. Of course, you know we're writing a book, Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education. It's going to come out in like a month from now. This is October. We're doing this. End of October. Is going to be out by the end of November. We took the first 100 presidential interviews that we did, because we're almost to 200 now, or maybe around 200. The first 100, and we took all those themes and ideas and topics and innovations. We were putting them in a book, and you could buy it and read it. I would love if you did, but if you don't, that's okay. I still love you, my audience. That's the reason I do this every day. And I get a lot of feedback from you saying that you like the podcast. Download different sound effects. That's the number one piece of feedback I get, is bringing in different sound effects, because I keep using the same buttons over and over again, apparently. So I'm going to do my best to switch it up. And I'm going to switch it up today. I've got two guests with me, no guest co-host. These guys, they pack enough power and punch that I don't need a co-host. They should be asking, maybe I need to ask them questions and they ask me questions, because they probably know more than I do about higher ed. And here we go. I'm going to bring them one at a time, but I got to do it in the most appropriate way. First, I have with me Dave Marshall. He's founder, ladies and gentlemen, and CEO of Mongoose. Dave, what's going on?
Thank you for that intro, and I like the applause. I've never actually heard that when my name's been called before.
Well, that will conclude this episode of the EdUp Experience, because I want to go out with a win. Dave, how are things good?
Things are great. I'm super proud to have to represent Mongoose. We have 65 people that work here that are all extremely passionate about helping students through the student journey, and we're in some challenging times now. So I'm excited to discuss how colleges and universities and leadership can do more to help more students.
Epic.
We're gonna love talking to you about that. Somebody that's going to help this conversation along is my second guest. Here he is. Dr. Walter Kimbrough. See, I already messed it up. Former president of Dillard University and interim executive director of the Black Men's Research Institute at Moorehouse College. Walter, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
See, I was so focused on getting it all right that I messed up the doctor and the Walter right away. So I couldn't even get to the end, but that's okay. I know we'll get through it together. How are you, and how are things going?
I'm doing good. I can't complain. Things are good. Yeah.
That's good. We're in a very interesting time in higher education, and we're going to talk about that today. But Dave, I want you to kind of kick us off. And, we've actually had, I think, one of your employees on this podcast before to talk about Mongoose, but as the founder at Mongoose, level set for us. For those that haven't heard of Mongoose, what do you do? How do you do it?
Sure. So we have what the market now calls an engagement platform. And there's a lot of, that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but the crux of it is that we allow staff members at institutions to have meaningful and productive text conversations with students to help them navigate the student journey. And so the ability to have text conversations at scale with students, and the ability to have chat. So like on the website, the student can chat with a bot to help get their issues resolved, and escalate that chat to a human when need be. We have 750 institutions right now, and it's a really unique spot that we're in, the perch that we get to watch what's working and what's not working across all departments at over 750 schools is fascinating. And so we have learned to be very empathetic with the struggles and the friction areas. And we've loved to communicate with our clients to help them improve the way they're communicating and the way they build relationships.
Interesting. Are there schools out there that you talk to that you have to convince that they need text messaging at this point? You're talking about text messaging at scale. Is that conversation when you talk to leaders and you go, you really need text messaging? And they go, no, we don't need it. I mean, what's that conversation sound like? Or is there wide adoption now just at different levels?
We used to have to sell the category, why would you want to text students? And that's no longer required. The conversation is now around how to best have text conversations with your students, because it's amazing how when you're having a text conversation with a student without some guidance, there's a lot of things you could do wrong. And the mobile phone is a highly personal device. So if you want to, have a conversation with a student and you start to, write things in all caps or say like, "Dear Philip," sincerely, and things like that, you can really put that relationship on a path that's not productive. So no, we no longer have to sell the medium, but we do sell the reasons why you should really be thoughtful about how to do it well.
Interesting. Dr. Kimbrough, we're connected on LinkedIn, and I looked you up, and the first thing I saw is on an intermission, I think is what you had underneath your name. You're on an intermission. I think you did 10 years at Dillard or somewhere around there.
Yeah.
How's this transition in and out of a presidency been for you? You've landed as the interim executive director for the Black Men's Research Institute at Morehouse College, which sounds like very important work, especially as we see more Black men not re-entering higher education. Can you just talk about the journey that you've had over the last year or so, and how you and Dave are connected, and have you used Mongoose?
Right. Well, so I've had a chance to partner with Mongoose in the past. I think I did a previous podcast with them. So I'm always open for lots of different partnerships. I spent 10 years at Dillard and then 7.5 years as president of Philander Smith in Little Rock, Arkansas. So that's 17.5 years, which is a third of my life as a college president. So that's a lot, particularly because the average tenure of college presidents continues to decline. It's about 6.5 years now. So I've done 2 longer than most people will do 1. And so getting to that point to say, okay, I've done this, I've been here 10 years, it's great, things are going well, surviving the pandemic, which for a lot of new presidents, the pandemic wiped them out. They were like, I'm done. For me, it wasn't as bad. It was interesting because it was something different. It was hectic, but I was invigorated by that kind of experience. So that didn't really drive it. It's just like, it's 10 years, that's long enough. Let's do something different for a while. So I called it intermission where I could do a little bit of this. I've been traveling, speaking on different campuses. Recently was at Southern Illinois, Carbondale, doing some
right
consulting.
Down the street for me. See,
oh,
if
okay.
we've done this before, I would have came and met you for coffee. How do you like?
Oh, okay.
I'm
yeah.
in St. Charles, Missouri at Lindenwood University. So it was, I don't know.
Got it. Yeah. Flew into St. Louis, drove to 2 hours. So had that experience, do some consulting work. I do expert witness work in hazing cases. So working on a case now, doing that. And then the opportunity at Moorehouse opened up. I grew up in Atlanta, so it was a chance to participate in one of the most storied HBCUs in the country, to be in Atlanta where I'm from, get to, have dinner with my folks when I'm in town. So all those things are great. And just a chance to sort of recenter, to look at things differently, from, a running institute there as a faculty member. So that's been great because I don't have people, something happens, nobody's calling me in the middle of the night. So just to have a break from that 24-hour has been just absolutely, it's just given me a year just to think. And I think that's great, as well as then to, do something to lay the foundation for this new program at Moorehouse that we're in the process of hiring a full-time permanent person now. But it's been great. I can't complain.
It's interesting that you talk about COVID and bring that up, because I've talked to a few presidents that have longer tenures at their institutions that have admitted, I was kind of winding down. COVID, for all of the bad things that it brought, it was almost like a second presidency within a presidency, because everything around you changed. It brought a new set of problems: emergency response, crisis communications, virtual to, on ground to online. It just presented its challenges. But you're also right. And as you go through an intermission, there were a number of college presidents that just kind of threw it down and just said, I'm done. I've done it. I'm close enough to retirement. I'm going to retire, or I'm going to go to another industry. It taught us a lot about leadership, and it taught us a lot about the gap that we have in access of higher education, for retention, especially for certain populations of students, lower economic, people of color who didn't have the same level of access as others. This is very important work, I'm assuming you're doing now at the Black Men's Research Institute. Can you talk about that? What is the work that you're doing now, and how is it contributing to the overall growth of Black men?
So Morehouse received a grant from the Mellon Foundation last year. And the idea was a couple of things. One is, how do we have conversations about manhood and masculinity in 2022? Morehouse is the only all men's historically Black institution in the country. So it should be the default place to start having those conversations. What can we learn about the education of Black men, manhood and masculinity, that then other people can learn from and then replicate wherever they are? So I think that's important work. As we talk about just, as a whole in higher education, more and more people now are saying, where are the men in higher education as a whole, just men? Because we've had this shift now where most college students are women. That's been the case for Black students for a number of years before this even happened nationally. So we're trying to figure out, why are men getting lost, and particularly even before, when they're in the K through 12 system, how do we teach them better, engage them differently? So that's part of the work that we'll do, to have those conversations, and particularly, the gender conversation as well. What does that look like in terms of being a man? What does that mean when you talk about gay men, trans men, all those kinds of, conversations? But the bigger picture too for Morehouse is that, because it has this unique place as the only, all men's institution where the vast majority of your population are Black men, it should be the default place for policy makers, for journalists. When they want to ask a question about Black men, the goal is you start with Morehouse. That doesn't mean you don't talk to people, scholars all across the country or around the world, but you should always talk to Morehouse. And so part of what we have to do is, and what I'm trying to help figure out is, how do we leverage the work that faculty are doing there now to make sure people think about them first? So some of that is marketing and branding, to really get out there and say, we've got folks who are doing this work as well. So I think that the Institute will help generate some new ideas for new research. But, I give the dean of our Morehouse Chapel, sort of, he encapsulated what we're really trying to do. He basically said to me, so essentially, Morehouse is the Black Men's Research Institute. And that's true. It's everybody there. It's not just this one area where I'm over. It's the entire college. We are the Black Men's Research Institute. So that's how we're going to approach the work.
100%.
I love that. I love it. So when you think of Morehouse, you think of going to you as the thought leaders and what's going on, right? That you're talking about being the thought leaders. That if a news agency wants to interview somebody to find out what's going on with Black men in America, they're coming to Morehouse College.
They're coming there first. Like I said, you can talk to whoever you want to. You can talk to the Ivies, you talk to the big flagships, but you start at Morehouse. And so I like the way that it was presented to me by the provost. I was like, yeah, it should be that way. And as somebody who grew up in Atlanta, Morehouse isn't still seen like that. I mean, there's been a lot of conversation with this election cycle about the role of Black men, but most of the people commentating on it don't have a connection to Morehouse. And to me, I understand that that's a problem. So there should be more of that, that people buy into that. So I'm excited about that part of the vision for this institute.
That's awesome. Dave, back over to you as we talk about, as we're talking about engagement in general. We're talking about students. You called Mongoose an engagement platform, which means a lot of things and nothing. So you have to define it, right? You have to define who you're trying to engage and what you're trying to engage them with and what for and for what reasons. How has business overall been for you over the last couple of years? And I ask this in the context that we're obviously seeing an explosion of online education. And you would think that a texting tool, something at scale, would be I don't know, a great complement to the growth of online education, especially for adult students that aren't going to be in front of their computer 24/7 or moving class to class. They're going to be going from job to home to kids. And texting is one way to nudge them and remind them that, hey, you have an assignment due, or you need to do this, or you need to do that. So how has it been going along with the explosion of online learning?
So when the pandemic started, our goals for the year in terms of new client acquisition, we hit our goals for the year, but there was definitely, it wasn't the way that we thought it was going to happen. The pandemic gave permission for schools to think differently and to make decisions faster, and to so we definitely had a lot more interest, and the process to how you purchase software at a school can be laborious at times, but everything was pretty fast and quick around that time. Since then, colleges tend to be running more like a business, and that good conversations and good interactions are profitable. And we've seen colleges realize that if you can have quality conversations at scale with your constituents, be it prospective students, parents, current students, alumni, that you can understand them more. And right now there's so much confusion out there, and questions that aren't answered, and misperceptions. And by sending a text or having a chat with another person, just saying, how do you feel? What are the things I could help you with? That it's being met with a lot of relief from the students' perspective. Students are stressed, mental health issues, anxiety, and to have a human at the other end of a phone where they have a safe place to ask questions and to admit how they're feeling, and being open to interventions and interactions there. We have clients that say things like, if I took away Mongoose, I think my staff would revolt. And because staff members at institutions, their job is to communicate with students, and if that gets really hard to do, or they're not able to do it, that's really frustrating. And higher ed is full of really caring people that want to help students and that want to do the right thing. And it's frustrating when they're just not able to do their job because of, students. All of a sudden, it's rude to call somebody that you don't know. When did that happen? Right? So you can send them an email, and you hope that they open it. But they found that texting really provides them a medium to have genuine conversations. So I'm glad that we've been able to help so many schools, and we've seen the adoption of texting and chat continue to rise.
Amazing.
Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, by Kate Colbert and Joe Salustio, with contributions by Elvin Freites, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. Get your Kindle edition or your softbound book. It's going to be
amazing.
I've been waiting to use that one. Back over to you, Walter, as we talk about leadership in higher education. I love this conversation because I can just hit it back and forth like a pinball to the two of you guys. 17 years as a college president, long time, even amidst all of the three changes that you had, moving from one institution to the next, and then a kind of COVID resetting. And now as you take your intermission and you look back on 17 years of being a college president, what do you know now that you wish you knew then about being in a college presidency that you think other leaders need to hear? Because there are so many that, well, let me just say this, there aren't as many aspiring to be a college president anymore, or at least that there used to be, for a number of reasons. COVID is one of them. The pipeline, people are leaving higher education in increasing numbers, so we have that whole great reshuffling thing. But there are still great people out there that are going to take a presidency in the next week or next year. What advice do you have for them?
That's a good question. I don't think there's anything I wish I would have known before. I think I went into it with an open mind, and part of that is because my background is student affairs, and I still believe it's the best training for a college president, because when you work in student affairs, you are dealing with the unexpected all of the time. I mean, it's just, student suicide attempt or successful suicide, a fight on fraternity roll. I mean, you just name it, it's always something. And so that's the way higher ed, is in the modern presidency. People who end up having difficulty who leave is usually not because students aren't graduating or even not raising enough money. It's because there's some big scandal that they don't handle well. The challenge with that, and is for me, I started my presidency the same year that Facebook started. So my entire presidency has been in the social media era, and social media has changed the game a lot. So something can happen on your campus that you don't know anything about. It hits Twitter and it gets out of control, whether it's true or not. And it's like, how do you manage those kind of social media wildfires that, there have been some cases when it wasn't true at all. And you're trying to deal with what's going on. It's like, what is this? This is crazy. And so people have to understand that it's not just you're some, academic leader, scholar, you shake hands, kiss babies, meet with legislators. It's going to be the stuff that you would never expect that blows up in your face. And you're like, how do I deal with that? So you have to have the right kind of, temperament to say, I'm good at dealing with the unexpected. And I think if you have that kind of temperament and you can sort of roll with the punches, which to me, that's what, COVID was. It was like, you start to see things happening, even though I guess you develop like a spidey sense, if you will. I was at a meeting in Washington, HBCU presidents. It was a bipartisan fly-in, and Chris Coons from Delaware came to the meeting, and he was like, I'm at this, Democrat retreat, and we're hearing this information about, a possible health issue for the country. And it's the way he said it. I picked up my phone and start, texting people saying, all right, I don't know what this is, but get the emergency team. Y'all need to meet because something is going on. It's the way he said it. He scared me. I was like, something is going on. That was the last week of February. And then 2-3 weeks later, we're moving everything online. So it's just having that. And I think too, for us being in New Orleans, dealing with the unknown really quick is not a big deal because this is hurricane country. Yeah. So you used to be like, all right, pack up, move everything online. So it wasn't as big as a lift for us as it was for places that didn't have a good platform to move your classes online. We already have one. So that was easy for us to do. For other places, it was a whole nother, because they were like, what do we do? I guess they did correspondence courses. You email your assignments to your instructor. You didn't have a platform to upload things. You didn't have, so it was chaotic for a lot of people. So we were advantaged in that regard. But it's dealing with the unknown, because those are the things when I'm watching people struggle right now. It's those things that pop up that have nothing to do with your day-to-day educating students, getting them jobs. That's not the stuff that is going to cause you any problems. It's not usually something that's happening in the classroom. It's, the revelations that you had, coaches or trainers that have been sexually abusing people. That's brought down president. I mean, those are the things that's bringing people down. It's not just the academic mission of the institution. So people have to go into a presidency knowing, okay, these are the things that you can't even, predict, but you got to be able to deal with them. So part of it's just having the right even keel temperament, and you deal with it like that.
Yeah, you're talking about mindset, right? Like it's you got to have the right mindset to deal with that stuff all the time and not let it get you so frazzled or stressed that you start to lose your mind, right? You got that's what COVID did to some people. They were like 2 years later, like, I'm done. I mean, I've seen a number of them like that's like, you just started, and they're just like, nope, I'm done. Because it was too much. Because imagine you start your presidency in the fall of 2019, everything's good, and then 8 months later, you're trying to figure out how to do a completely new model, and you're like, I didn't sign up for this. I mean, nobody signed up for that. So I think it was really tough for some people that
and then people who have been around for a while, I think there were some seasoned presidents that just said, I'm planning on retiring, but I'm the right person now to make it through this. So that was good for those institutions. So now you're seeing people who couldn't really deal with the quick change, and then those who had planned to retire in 2020 that have waited, and now they're starting to retire.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a lot of turnover now.
Expect the unexpected, Walter. I've talked to a number of the HBCU presidents. Most recently, I talked to Mary Schmidt Campbell from Spelman, former president there, and Wayne Frederick from Howard, and Jack Thomas, and a few others. And at the time I spoke to them all, probably a year ago, we had a bunch come on kind of in the same 6-month period. There was just talk of enrollment struggle. They're just in struggle at HBCUs. And now we're seeing an uptick. One of the sectors that is having an uptick is the HBCU. And in the greater context, and David, this is kind of a secondary question to you too. Why are we seeing that uptick? Because leaders have had to really be in a 2D world, right? And you think about how that leadership has changed people. What are students telling us, especially Black students who are going to the HBCU? Is it now time for true community returns? And how can texting, Dave, this is the second part of the question to you. Have you seen texting help create community? So first part to you, Walter, second part to you, Dave.
So, I've been talking to people about this recently. I've seen it for the last 6-7 years now. There has been a broader cultural embrace of HBCUs that we have never seen before, that I've been really excited about. Some of it has been, driven by, I think, just the environment on some high school campuses. There was recently an incident here in Louisiana, maybe half an hour outside of New Orleans, where there was some racial epithets used at a, pretty diverse high school. And so I've talked to a lot of freshmen over the years who are just like, I need to be in an HBCU environment. They're looking for that because they feel like there's just a lot of racial tension that they don't want to deal with. They're like, I just want to be a student. And if I'm at an HBCU, I know if somebody doesn't like me, they just don't like me because they don't like me. It's not because I'm Black. And so people just, say some of that. But then, particularly after George Floyd, you had a lot of different corporations and entities that really embraced HBCUs and gave them a broader platform. So now you have the NBA for the All-Star game in Atlanta a couple of years, a big HBCU theme. I just saw recently on Twitter, Luka Doncic, who isn't even from the US, is wearing Howard University Nike basketball shoes. Now that's huge because it's Luka, who is one of the top players in the nation, representing Howard University. Those are the kinds of things that we're starting to see. It's somebody like Deion Sanders who brings his brand, this oversized brand, to Jackson State. Jackson State gets to be on College Game Day on ESPN. That doesn't happen without. But I think because of this, idea that HBCUs are worthy of some of these investments, you have a primetime Deion Sanders come in and say, I want to do this for a while. So I think all of those things are helping to raise the profile of HBCUs in such a way that people want to, more students and families are looking at them as viable options that they weren't 10, 15 years ago. They were, a little shy about it. Maybe I don't want to, but now you're seeing people saying, I'm only looking at HBCU. So it's been good. I mean, there's still the challenges, particularly in terms of students and families having the resources to go to college anywhere. Mm-hmm. That's a challenge too. And that's going to be a challenge for HBCUs, but that's sort of
how does it make you feel? Does it give you the warm and fuzzies after doing so many years at Dillard? And does it make you go, you know what? I was working so hard to get to these types of moments. I mean, do you feel, relief or a pride with all that work that you were putting in?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is, the enrollment numbers are good. We want to have decent enrollments. I mean, our enrollment at Dillard has been steady. It was steady the entire 10 years I was there. I was much more excited that our retention and graduation rates went up and the kinds of graduate and professional opportunities that the students were receiving were improved. And I think that's a part of it too. So for me, it's not just about the numbers of people. It's me saying, a recent, graduating class, the number of students who got into Ivy League law schools was like tremendous. Those kinds of things, because then they're able to go to those places, do well, and then that adds to the brand of Dillard University. So those are the kinds of things I think that it wasn't just about enrollment. It was a level of consciousness for corporations and for graduate programs to say, wait a minute, I need to go back and look at some of the talent at HBCUs. That's been, I think, really good.
Nice. Dave, talk about community a little bit in Mongoose, right? Creating community on ground in a residential environment, creating community in a hybrid or blended learning environment, creating community in online, fully online. Students want to feel like they belong, but this is a big topic that has come up. You know, does the student feel like they belong here? And if they don't, they're going to simply go somewhere else. So you have to create the sense of belonging. How can texting help create community?
I think about it very much in a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that in order for a human, and in this case, a student, to be successful, they have to have the foundational things in place. So if they're extremely confused and they don't know where to go to eat, or they don't know what time classes starts, or they can't get their basic needs met, then all the rest of it is just not going to happen. So they're not going to build community. That's for sure. So I've seen our clients do a really nice job by communicating with students and not always using messaging that's just task oriented. Like, you have to do this, you have to do this, and this is due on this date. And the students are always feeling like I'm always being told what I have to do and what I didn't do yet. And when having a genuine conversation can, while helping them complete those tasks, right? That they do have to do these things. But if you're asking them and you're having a conversation about, where do I go to do this and how do I get this done, they have a genuine connection with an individual at the institution. So that lowers their guards down now, right? That they have an ally there. So I was speaking with a client earlier this week, and her team is in charge of the first year experience, and
very important.
Very important job, and they hired a student worker to manage the texting. And this student would reach out and help first year students navigate all their problems and questions. And they used various techniques like, hey, student name, could you reply with one emoji as to how you're feeling? And boy, is that given permission for them to admit that they might be stressed or happy or scared or whatever. And it's just a way that you can start to have a conversation. And when so there was a event at that institution where all the first year students came to, and when they introduced the student worker that had been on the other end of the phone, they stood up and cheered, right? Wow. For someone that was there to help them. And they didn't know if the person on the other side was white or black, or there's just a helpful human that cared about them. And they felt a sense of belonging, and they felt like that there was empathy at the institution, and that they were happy to be there. And that, like, what a welcome feeling that is for a student that's 17, 18, 19 years old, going to college, and perhaps there was controversy as to whether they should go or whether it's safe and what they're going to study, and entering that next era of their life, to have a trusted person on the other end of the phone that they can just text for help whenever they need it, to help them navigate that, opens the door for community to be built. So you asked me, how does texting help build community? I think it just puts people, if their hierarchy of needs, if the foundational ones are met, then they can start to interact with each other, be it in an online forum or in person.
Beautiful.
I want to say now, if by the way, that was a huge, awesome tip to text students and have them come back with just a single emoji on how they're feeling. But I would just caution everybody, don't go out and do that right away if you don't have the complete and appropriate infrastructure in place on how to handle it. First of all, being able to text at scale, and secondarily, to take all those texts back and do something with it. That's why a technology like Mongoose is important, because it gives you the technology you need. You can't just go out and text a bunch of students, and then if they text back and you get hundreds and hundreds of those, you have to do something with it, Dave. So I just want to stress that. And whenever we have anybody come on and they say, oh, this is a great thing that somebody did, we have to remind them that you need a piece of technology to help you do that. And that's what Mongoose can do.
That's absolutely right. In that same conversation that I was having, that one of the students replied with a female girl crying, right? So what do? That's a sensitive, you could ask questions and ask into it, and if you send a whole bunch of texts out at Friday at 4:50 p.m. and then your whole team leaves, and the students were ready to have a conversation with someone that they trust, and you're not there with not only the infrastructure, but the time and the focus to be able to have the conversations. That's really key.
Love that. Well, gents, I could talk to you both forever, but we can't go forever. But we'll go for as long as you want. But I'm going to ask you my two final questions that I have for every single guest, and we'll start with Dave. We're going to start with you first, and Walter, you can take us home. Number one, what did we not say about Mongoose today? And Walter, yours will be, what did we not say about your intermission or your time at Moorehouse right now that you would like to say? Anything that you have going on, speaking engagement, client visits that you're making, new technologies you're releasing, anything at all you want to say about your company or your place of business? And secondarily to that, Dave and Walter, what do you see as the future of higher education? And we're going to quote you and put you all over social media with your answer. No, we won't do that.
What is the future of higher ed? That's a pretty lofty question. So, first of all, one thing that I think people should know about Mongoose is that there is a technology out there that can help you build better relationships with your students, and we're not the only one. So I'm not trying to push just us, but investing in a texting platform, investing in a platform that allows your staff members to have meaningful, important conversations with students is essential. And so I just very, very much want to urge schools to do that. And as far as the future of higher education, higher ed is an experience. Right. So the other options that students have is getting a certificate somewhere or not go to college, and being able to create experiences that are really meaningful for the full person seems to be where I see higher education going, because if you're just transferring knowledge, right, there's a lot of ways that can be done. Students could listen to podcasts or read books or go to the library or take a certificate program online, but developing the full human to be contributing productive, positive members of society, that's something that is valuable for students and families and governments to invest in. So I see higher ed doing a better job of showing the benefits of that full student experience.
That's a pretty darn good answer, Dave. The transfer of knowledge versus the education of the person. There's a podcast episode there for sure. Walter, tough one to follow up on, but now it's your turn, my friend.
So I would say for the Black Men's Research Institute at Morehouse College, one of the things we're starting to gear up for now is to do a symposium in March where we look at Black men's mental health. So I'm really excited about getting that together. We'll bring in some scholars to do that. We'll continue to engage the community on campus, particularly students I'll be meeting with, to talk about, what are their ideas about this institute, what it could be, what do they think when they hear the terms manhood and masculinity, and how do they make meaning of those terms today. So those are the kinds of things I'm really excited about that we'll be doing. I guess I would piggyback on what Dave talked about in terms of the future of higher ed. It is an experience. And I think that one of the things that the pandemic taught a lot of people, and you got a lot of pushback from students who had to go fully online and wanted their tuition refunded as a part of that, is that I'm not getting the experience. They're saying if I wanted to go to the University of Phoenix, I would have gone to the University of Phoenix. So I want the clubs and the sports and all those other things. So it is an experience. And I think that people have to learn how do you use a technology to leverage the relationships, but not make that the only way that we engage each other. Humans are social creatures. And so we want to be together. There are studies that are coming out, even going to K through 12 in terms of what that meant for people to be disconnected from each other and just doing everything virtually. Like I said, I like technology as much as the next person, maybe even more, but to me, it's a means to an end. I think some philosophers say that education is not just for information, it's for formation as well. And so that formation happens in those, in-person experiences as well, but the technology helps you reach a lot of different people and you can reach them faster, but then you still want to have that deeper personal connection as well. So, I think that some of the work of people like Clay Christensen and folks who just thought that, we'd sort of get rid of the bricks and mortar higher ed experience. I think that was overblown. And I think the pandemic showed there are a lot of limitations of that. And I know that there are lots of parents who got tired of their children being in the house with them during the pandemic. I have a 16-year-old and one that'll be 14 in a couple of weeks. Not only do they have to leave the house to go to college, they have to go far away. And I think that I am like most parents. So college is, I heard somebody say, it's still the best halfway house in America. We're still kicking these kids out the house when they get time to go. So I'm not worried about that. There needs to be a place that they can go and experience life and make mistakes and do all of that. I think that's a part of it too. So, but the technology
you said your kid, there's a lot of colleges in Australia. I'd like to show them.
If they want to go to Australia, they can go to Australia. They can go wherever they want to. And actually, my daughter actually has talked about going to college in Europe too. So, I mean,
really?
She has actually mentioned that, which we were like, what? But so those are the kinds of things. So I think that, I think the pandemic brought people back a little bit and just said, yeah, this in person, there are some benefits to that. So we'll see what happens, but I don't think we're going to make this mad dash to everybody being online as people thought. And definitely for K through 12, it has not been successful. So it's just all the reports about their scores. There is no good news coming out of K through 12 during the pandemic. So that is not a solution for K through 12. So we'll see.
Well, with that, I'm going to tell you guys what an honor it was to speak to both of you, especially at the same time. Incredible insight. We're going to be watching your journey, Walter. And of course, we will watch Mongoose continue to grow. Dave, it's been great having you on. First, of course, let me outro you appropriately. Dave Marshall. He's founder and CEO of Mongoose. Dave, did you have a good EdUp experience today?
I had a wonderful experience. You've been a great host. So thanks for having me.
Would you say that if I didn't give you the applause? Well, don't answer that question, Dave. Don't answer. We're going to say that you still think that, applause or no applause. And of course, I have Dr. Walter Kimbrough. He's former president of Dillard University and interim executive director of the Black Men's Research Institute at Morehouse College. Say that 10 times fast, I dare you. Walter, did you have a good experience today?
I did. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd. Commencement. The Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education by Kate Colbert and Joe Salustio with contributions by Elvin Freites is now available for pre-order on Amazon. Get your Kindle edition or your softbound book. It's going to be
Amazing.